So then we are back with the more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where you find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Mashiach laid waste from many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu the prophet, it's important establishing a link with the tabernacling and the restoration period concerning then what we know as the building of the third temple. There are lots of situations going on in the Middle East, and the building of the third temple is truly crucial. The nations are in uproar. The whole world is going through a transitional time, and lots of clarifications are being given regarding the instructions. Bad translations are being explained. And the third temple is very crucial because Ezekiel mentions the tabernacle and also mentions sections of the temple. Now then, understandably, the Middle East is going through lots of changes, and the Arab world obviously has made a deal with the Kingdom of the East in bringing somewhat a stable economy, principally in the East and in the Pacific. Concerning then the tabernacle, as per Yeshayahu the prophet, chapter 1:8, we find then the importance of the training or retraining of his people. Firstly, regarding the spirit or the presence of Yod He Vav He. Now then, in Ezekiel, we find then few understandings of the vision he had. And then the bronze understanding that there is in Gelah or Revelation, we find then that Ezekiel had a similar experience in the spirit, obviously, because in the area of the inconscience, these great prophets saw what it was like a person with the skin color of bronze. So it gives you a few indications of the region, of the culture, lining up with the revelation and what then Yohanan saw before, in the importance of having this particular scripture explained. So then the waiting of the third temple then at least is bearable, because the situation of the Middle East is extremely unstable, yet there are many nations in those areas being obviously informed of what's coming. And then on the first chapter of Ezekiel, quite understandably, the first chapter of Ezekiel gives us a few clues of the machine of synchronisms. And then as he saw the understanding of this person that had obviously a bronze figure, and explains that the color was like bronze or polished bronze, indicating the understanding of the culture and the people of the time. And then Enoch had quite a few visions regarding then the divine and regarding the machine of synchronisms. So we are dealing with a very important section of tabernacling, being in the center, and then other events being synchronized around it. So then he saw what it was like, the color of polished bronze and around, and he saw loins, and giving a bit of light of this particular prophecy, and then lining up with the revelation and Yohanan, what he saw. It was precisely what Ezekiel saw, and Ezekiel saw what Enoch saw. So the only distinction from a prophet of the other prophet is simply extra information regarding the layers and the events, but the proper understanding of the vision itself remains intact, because it must. So it has a continuation from generation and generation and generation. So when we read Gelah, Revelation, we have an idea what Yohanan saw. Now there is a problem with the Revelation, because it indicates the main player being Yeshua, and truly it's not. So another problem of culture situation, it must be straightened out, because Shaphat does not mix with Yeshua. So then the individual that was observed in these prophecies in Ezekiel, sections of Enoch, we find then in Revelation is Yod He Vav He Gelah, revealing, but then Yod He Vav He, then Shaphat, or the judge, or the establisher of the events of the time of the end, as per Vayikra. This then gives us a bit more understanding from what then Yohanan saw. And obviously he was not in the island of Patmos. There's another situation related, because it's after Domitian had sentenced him to go to the island. So there are lots of events that from the Eastern perspective must be then re-established. That's, the situation related with the restoration period, the restoration of understandings, the restoration of the culture, the restoration of the scripture and the events. This must be restructurized, because 1,000 years without the influence of tabernacling, these scripture were scandalized. They were modified, they were edited. And the restoration indicates a restoration of the scripture and the whole lot related with it. So then bit by bit we should be able to find these information. Now the concept remains. The trouble we are facing is from culture and another culture, but the concepts, they remain. They must be simply reorganized in a regional language form. Not talking about changing the cultures of the country, but only organizing the events via the structuring of the original manuscripts. So later on, I'm going to take piece by piece and then understand where these original manuscripts lead towards. So then please stay tuned, much more coming up.